All right. Hey everyone, we have Josh Martin on today with Martin Properties, his YouTube handle. We brought him on today because he is a new house hacker, and I just wanted to bring him on to tell everybody about his story a little bit. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we actually I'm pretty sure we were both at Zuber's event, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
his
it
50K
was awesome.
celebration. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we somehow did not actually meet there and talk. Um
Right. And then I started seeing some of your videos and I'm like, man, he was doing lives and doing videos from there. I'm like, there was a lot of people that I didn't get to meet, I'm sure, just like yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I'm bringing you on my channel, and I want to hear your story and how your first house hack's going. So, before we get into that, introduce yourself to the audience, where you're from, what your situation looks like, and what got you into real estate.
Okay, well, my name's Josh Martin. We were formerly known as REI Stoners on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and we have changed our name now to Martin Properties. Uh, Big part of it before was we did live in California before, and my wife has epilepsy, and we were in the cannabis business and found out that if she took a concentrate of it, that it could help her seizures. It's just something we were dabbling with because none of the medicines were working. And finally it started working. She stopped having seizures. It was like a month, then a few months, then a year, and now it's been 6 years. And so we don't shy away from that. The REI stoners, we're using it as a medicine, and it's helping her in her life. And some people it doesn't actually help. So we're not advocating it for everyone. It just helps her. And for us, we rolled with the name because we wanted other people to know that if you consume cannabis every day, you can still buy real estate. You can still hunker down and hold a job and all that stuff. Stoners just aren't lazy, and that's kind of what we were trying to portray. But now that we got our first duplex and we're looking for, possibly private money investors. We, kind of want to drop that handle and go with something more professional. But that's kind of where we're at now. And we're in Washington now, from California. We actually made a big move up here to, have some property that we can afford, because in California we weren't able to afford anything in that area. So yeah, we ended up shooting up to Washington and loving the area, and here we are.
Wow. So, from California to Washington, still another high cost of living area, though, isn't it?
Yeah, in Seattle it is. And so that's kind of what we were told before. We were living in Monterey, California, and we've been wanting to get out of California. It's just expensive overall, taxes, everything. So we figured let's find somewhere else. And we started researching different areas to move to. Arizona was kind of blowing up at the time, Idaho. What we found out, though, that Washington was a place that we could come that was a bit higher, but if we lived on the outskirts of Seattle, we can still find something that was feasible for what we could qualify for. So before we even left California, we actually talked to some lenders, and they told us what we would qualify for. And when we started looking at places up here before we even moved, I was like, wow, we can actually get something up there. So that's kind of why we decided to move up here. And, also for Dion McNeely, he is one of the investors that has a channel that a lot of us follow that was also at the Aura event. And he helped us out big time along this journey. He was somebody I found on Bigger Pockets, and I was like, wow, okay, let me talk to this guy. And he was generous enough to write back to email me. And I was like, wow, this guy's cool. So I kept hearing stories of, investors saying, hey, if you want to meet other investors, just ask them out to coffee. So I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And he's like, sure, I'll have lunch with you guys. So I told my wife, I'm like, hey, we got an investor who's willing to meet up with us in Washington, have lunch with us, and kind of tell us the ropes or show us the way. And my wife wasn't really following all this. I had been watching all the videos and kind of trying to learn about what I needed to do to get into real estate. And so I wanted her to kind of see what we were going to do and hear from him, like, the strategy that we were kind of going with this house hacking that we kept hearing about. And so when we got to the restaurant, and she was hearing the story from him, which was told a lot more eloquently than myself. She was able to understand a bit better. And then once we kind of strolled around Washington, she just really started falling in love with the area. And that was kind of it. Once we got back to California, she's like, let's do it, let's move. And at the same instance, I got back to work that week from my vacation and they were laying me off. So it kind of was falling into play, everything. So
Gotcha. That works. Yeah, because my next question was going to be like, what did you do for jobs qualifying for a new place? But it sounded like you had at least unemployment for a little bit, or
well, so with my wife, another reason we moved in this area is because she had a Whole Foods job and she had been there for a couple of years and she could transfer.
okay,
So she knew of a couple locations here. One was in Tacoma, two were in Seattle. So we figured if we moved in the outskirts of Seattle, we can still travel to work and, possibly buy ourselves a duplex. And what we found out that in that area, King County, it goes down really far. And we were living in Auburn at the time. And so she transferred to one in Seattle. So we kind of had to find a place that we were renting that was somewhat close to her work, which it was about an hour. And, that with all the traffic in Seattle, that's about the limit we wanted her to be traveling. Some days it was a little bit longer. So as we started looking for, you know, jobs up here, I can find anything because I just got laid off. So I decided, all right, well, what am I going to do up there? I just started looking on Indeed and finding anything I could possibly find. And I found a Frito-Lay job as a merchandiser. Didn't know what it was. Just figured, let's try it out. They're paying, I think, 24 or, it was like $22 an hour. And I was like, okay, it's a little bit cut from what I'm making from my lab job in California, but it's okay. My wife was actually getting a pay raise. So it was equaling out. We were also saving in rent and everything else. So I got a job at Frito-Lay and it ended up being something that the lender, I was worried that I was losing that job in a laboratory and then I was going to a retail job and how it was going to affect the fact that we were going to get a loan. And it didn't affect it at all. I had been at the lab job for a couple years and they still considered it retail because I was manufacturing for the company because it was a cannabis company and they were still selling cannabis throughout COVID and everything. It was looked at as, a real job, I guess. I don't know like how a lot of it played out, but for me, I was just glad that once I got here, I had a job that still fell under the 2 year mark of us getting a loan.
yeah,
We were just like, all right, let's just keep looking for houses. We're still qualifying, even though I moved jobs. So that was the big bonus for us.
yeah. So, well, you still qualified, like you said, and you found yourself a place. So let's talk a little bit about this house hack and what you got going on.
So the house hack took a while. When we got our condo and just were renting, and my wife was working and I was working, we were just saving every day. I was working a lot of overtime, and we just knew that we needed to put as much money as we could away. We kept hearing the down payment, the all the other fees that follow along with it. So what we did was we ended up being able to put away $3,000 a month in our savings every month. And that was big for us. We were cutting all the corners that we could. So once we did that, I just kept doing the homework, like Michael Zuber says, and I was looking at properties, laying them out in a certain way, like, okay, I'm going to do the homework on this one at the rate it is, at what they want for it. And does it give me the yield that I'm looking for? And if it didn't, then I would manipulate it by dropping the rate, buying it down, seeing if I can get the cost down on the house, various things, seller financing, and I just lay those all out in front of me and then talk to my agent about them and then see if we can do it. This went on for quite a while. We were here, I want to say, it was at least a year had gone by, and my wife was like, all right, so you've been searching, or is this going to happen? And I'm like, I'm just trying to find the right yield. I keep hearing, don't buy an alligator, don't buy for equity. I want to buy for that cash flow. But it started looking, as the rates going up, we weren't going to find that turnkey property anymore. So we ended up starting to look for something a little more fixer upper, and that's exactly what we found. We found something that needed some work. We crunched the numbers, figured if we put, X amount into it, we would still be able to cash flow. So I just ran the numbers stating, okay, if I put this much into it, I'm going to cash flow this amount and so on. I just kind of ran it down the line. And then we just maxed it out and said, all right, if all else fails and there's some things that we don't figure and there's an extra $20,000 or something added to it, what's that going to drop it down to? And I think that still dropped us down to like a 7%, if I'm not mistaken. And that was still a base hit for me, you know. So I was like, all right, well, let's just roll with this. And then at that point, it was like, are we going to get it? Who are we going to be competing with? Does anybody else want to jump in here? And surprisingly enough, we got it. And we were amazed, you know, that we didn't have any fight back. Nobody else went in. We were even able to work with the seller and get money. They put in $5,000, or no, sorry, they put in $3,000 to help buy down the rate.
So
And
seller
then
concessions. You got some seller concessions there. Yeah.
yeah, and then there was some problems with the property after appraisal that the appraiser made them fix. Otherwise, they couldn't go through with the sale. And that was about $10,000 worth of stuff that they had to fix. And so, yeah, we just negotiated. I think it was, I want to say it was $18,000 or no, $13,000 we negotiated down the rate and all the concessions and everything. So we ended up buying our rate down to 5.75%, with all the concessions. And so we were pretty happy with that. And now that we have rented one of the sides out, we're getting 22.75 for that side, which makes us be, we're paying about $1,210 or $12 or something like that is what it comes out to. So it's just amazing that we were renting a condo for $1,600, and now we're, and that was a one bedroom, and now we have a 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom house with a yard for our dogs, and it's only 12, a little over 1,200 a month. And that's just from us, you know, getting this duplex, fixing one side up. You know, we're living in the other side and slowly fixing this side up little
Yeah.
by little. And you know, when we do rent it out, we feel that we're going to be able to get even more. And we're hoping, when my fingers crossed here, that we're going to be able to pull down about a 13% yield is what I've crunched the numbers to once we move out.
All right. So yeah, what's the plan there? Are you going to stay there for a while, or do you only plan to stay here for a year, fix it up, and get both sides rented out?
Well, right now we're just enjoying the ride. We
Yep.
are loving the house hack. My wife is enjoying the yard. She put in some rose bushes that she's loving, and you know, I love to see her happy because this isn't something that she was even expecting. I got all into this real estate thing, and you know, I don't know how much she told me she was all on board, which is great, but you know, you never know how much someone actually is on board. I know my mom wasn't on board because you know, she even told my wife she was like scared, and my wife's like, "Well, what's the problem? All he's doing is putting away a bunch of money. At worst, he's going to have a huge savings of money if something happens, you know."
Yeah.
And you know, and so once we got the property, and now she has this, and like, you know, we were out in the yard the other day. I bought a little disc basket so we can throw discs in our yard because it's a big yard. And she just grabbed me and hugged me in the corner, and she's like, I love it, this is our property. And right there, that just makes me want to just go slow, settle down. I'm still looking at properties every day, though. I'm trying to find a deal always. And if something comes up and I find a private money lender that I can work a deal where I can, you know, mix that extra percentage in and I can get something that works, then I'll be, you know, I'll be on top of that, you know. But for right now, it's just do the homework every day and go to my real estate meetups, try to talk to people like you every day as much as I can, and just keep real estate in my life, you know, so that I don't miss anything.
Yeah. And how cool is that? You went from a 1 bedroom, 1 bath condo that you're paying $1,600 a month for rent, right?
Yeah.
And now you're paying still, I mean, you're out of pocket 1,200 bucks a month for
Yeah.
rent, but it's not even rent anymore. You own this place. You're having somebody else help pay down your house. So
Right. And we got
yeah.
some, we got fruit trees in the backyard that my wife is just amazed with. And, you know, right now she's like, I want to get fertilizer and I want to do all this stuff. And so, you know, I understand like a lot of investors want to keep going to the next step, and it's in my head, but I'm enjoying my family and I'm enjoying where we're at right now, you know, and for me, I want another deal because I want the financial freedom so that we can do this every day and we don't have to rely on our jobs, and we can have whatever property and then just enjoy it to the fullest.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't know how you feel about this, but one thing I really liked about house hacking when I was starting to do it, and I mean I've done 3 house hacks now. Um, I really liked, even though it's a pain up front, learning how to be a essentially a property manager living right next door, in your same unit. If you get good tenants, it's great. It could also suck, but when you get a call, it's right next to you. You're learning so much about how to be a landlord right there. So,
right?
yeah.
I mean, hands-on experience is the best. And I've been following the lumberjack landlord for a while, and I took his course, and that helped me a lot in just trying to understand that this is a people business,
Hmm.
and so to treat everybody according, just like I would want to be. And so even when we discuss raising rents or how we're going to raise rents, is it going to be yearly, bi-yearly? These are all little things that, people might not think right off the bat, but they're conversations that me and my wife will sit down and have because we want our tenants to be happy. So,
Yeah.
one of our thought process behind that was, okay, how did we feel when we got our rent raised every year as opposed to every other year? Just little things like that.
Yeah. And it's going to be I mean, it's all going to be a learning process. It doesn't matter how many courses you take, how many YouTube videos you watch. It's once you're doing it, it's the best learning. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I posted a video on my YouTube recently because my tenant emailed me and said they had a leak under the sink. And I'm like, man, I had a handyman do it. He said, oh, I can do it cheaper than the plumber. And now I know why, So, he, wasn't even a month and it started leaking. So I was like, okay, well, I already have a couple other plumbers that are in my phone book here that I've been writing down. So I called one of them. They came over, they were able to assess it. He came, just walked over next door and told me, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. I was like, all right, perfect. Go ahead. Just go ahead and fix it and take care of it for the tenant. And, I don't have to go in there. The tenant knows I'm not coming in their business. They actually have a professional going in and fixing it. Problem solved. It's all done. The tenant knows that I was on top of it. And the
yep.
tenant sent me pictures and no problem. A couple emails, a couple calls, somebody else fixed the problem. And now we're golden and we're back on track again.
Yeah. Yeah. And being on top of that, it's just so important, especially if you're self-managing. I did try to hand my properties off, a couple of them to property management at one point, and I self-manage all my properties again. They're never going to do it how you want it done. So you're always going to be managing someone, whether it's managing your properties or managing the property manager. So,
Right. So our thought process is, and I've heard a few different investors talk about it, is know your property. And so if we know our properties, and then we go and buy another house hack, which is our plan again, and then we get to know that property, and then we have a property manager maybe at some point take over them because we want to whatever vacation or we don't want to deal with anything anymore. At least I'll know what and when they're calling for whatever reason because I know the properties well.
yeah. No, that's a great point. And yeah, living in your properties, once they're rentals, you know them inside and out. So, like for instance, my last property I lived in, my last house hack, I had a tenant that called and said that there was their drain was clogged. I'm like, I snaked that. I had that snaked right before they left. I always do that before people leave, just have them clear drain. So I'm like, I know that was your hair that clogged it. And they were pushing back a little bit. I'm like, would you like to see? I had it jetted. Actually, I had it jetted because I was having slow drainage anyway. I had it jetted, so there's no issues with the drain. I'm like, it completely drained fine when you moved in. We walked through the whole property together. We took video together. I even told you that I got this snaked, and then you clogged it up. So that hair that came out's your hair. Like, but
Right.
yeah, you got to know that kind of stuff. Like if you had 15 properties out of state that you've never seen before, and somebody calls 2 months in and says that there's a drain clogged, it's going to be hard to be able to charge your tenant that if you really don't know if it was their problem or not. So
Exactly. And that's a big thing that I learned in the lumberjack landlord course was before we even rented it out, I went through the sink drain. I took video. This is the date. I'm doing this video because I'm trying to show drainage. And then I had the water just going for, however many minutes. And then I went down and showed underneath the plumbing not leaking. At the time, it wasn't leaking. I did the same thing in the bathroom. I just wanted to kind of show any of these spots, even outside. One of the outside spigots, when you turned it on, it was kind of spraying all out the sides. So I took pictures of that and said, "This isn't a tenant issue. This is already there before."
yep,
And then I also gave the tenant a few pages to go over and say, "Hey, look, go through the entire thing and write down what you see is wrong." And I did the same thing, and then I can kind of go through this, and now we can go back and forth because the floors had scratches. There were certain things that I knew were already there, so I just needed them to also confirm that.
yeah, and I do that on and the one difference that I do, I think I don't know if you mentioned this. I will actually walk through with the tenants when they move in and do a video walk through the property while they're there. So yes, it's time stamped and they're there with me
Ah,
saying, yes, okay, I noticed this is already wrong. This is fine. So I'm like, you got it. You cleared all this stuff. We talked about this. And then I give them the whole checklist to go off of. And they have 7 days to say, oh, maybe there's something that was missed
okay.
and that maybe we didn't take a video of. And let them like live in the house and, they have that time to figure it out. So
Got it. I'm going to use that.
yeah. So yeah, I mean it's helpful and I haven't had too many problems. And then when there is problems like I just had, I have firing power to come back with. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So it seems like it seems like you got yourself a good deal. It seems
yeah,
like you and your wife are happy now. Um and you took a step most people aren't willing to take. I mean, most people are not willing to be a landlord or even, live below your means for as long as you had to take to save up for a down payment. Um
yeah.
so that's awesome. I mean, I love it.
Even the renovation part of it, a lot of I keep hearing people don't like doing renovations, and for me, I mean, even at the beginning of it, it was a bit rough because I did not know anything about, how to get a contractor, if I should get a contractor, anything. Like I was kind of winging all of it, and that's why I was telling myself, man, I should have took the lumberjacks course before I got the house. But once I was like under contract and all that, I was really just not trying to spend any money as well, because once you get under contract, you don't want to spend. And once I knew we were going to be landlords, I was like, man, I really need to take his course. I know there's some gems in there that I need. And, now that I know everything, well, I don't know everything, but now that I know all the little things from his course that are going to help me, it's a huge step for us. I mean, just being able to go around the entire house and take dimensions of screens, doors, countertops, anything. So if anything ever needs to be replaced, I have everything on my fingertips. What kind of stove we have, refrigerator, dishwasher, that I can relay the message to a plumber or electrician. So yeah, I like being organized, and that was a real helpful tool for me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so if is there anything you would like to leave my audience with? If somebody's looking to do their first house hack, since you're fresh at doing this now, what would you say would be like the biggest thing if they're just starting to look? What should they focus on?
Uh, I mean, the first thing is just building up, your credit and everything. That was the first thing that we had to do. We had to, because we had debt. We had about $4,000 or $5,000 in debt. So the first thing we started doing was just hammering that bad debt down. First step, you got to just one step at a time,
Yeah,
So we did that. The next thing it was my wife had no credit. I had credit, but she didn't. So we had to start getting her credit cards, which they didn't even give her a credit card. So she had to get one of those. It's like a
Unsec or not. Yeah, the
debit.
secured credit cards or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so she had to
Yep.
start off with something like that, and then we started building her credit. So it's not super easy just to get into it. You
Yeah.
really have to, depending on where you're at, you have to start with those first few steps and build up. And then once we build up our credit, because we knew we'd get a better rate and everything, and the whole deal would be better if our credit was good. And my
Yeah.
credit was good, but hers was bad. So they kept saying, yeah, even having one person's bad credit can pull both of yours down
Yeah.
because they take this average. And I was like, damn, well, that kind of sucks because hers was really low. So it brought my high average down under like down to 600 or something like that because she had no credit, and they say no credit's worse than having bad credit.
Yeah.
So I would say work on those things. And then after you try to hammer those down, just start saving and being frugal, figure out what is the most important thing. Is it your future or is it now? If it's your future and you want to build so that you can retire like we do and have just assets, then just do it. Start, putting that money away. We were putting $3,000 a month between us away and, living off of rice and beans and ramen and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and doing it for knowing that it was only going to be for a couple years until we got our first place. And I mean, we're still doing it now. We got our second place, but we're being a little bit more spendy now. We're, spending more a little bit more on food. My wife likes to bake and cook,
Yeah.
so that's all fine and dandy. But yeah, I would just tell the audience definitely start off by the one step at a time method, and figure out what you need to do. If it's knocking that debt down, do that first.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, where can my audience find you if they wanted to ask you questions?
Well, I'm at Martin Properties on YouTube, and I think it's Martin Properties REI on Instagram because I couldn't get Martin Properties on there.
Okay.
But also on Facebook, I'm just Josh Martin on there. So yeah, if anybody wants to talk to me, you can do that, or you can reach me at househackers1@gmail.com. And yeah, comment anything on any of the sections, or just reach out and email me. I'm down to talk with any investors and start any meetups or whatever. I'm actually going to a meetup tomorrow, which I'm excited about because they're not often on the weekends. So I was like, all right, weekend meetup.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely throw all that in the description of the video so people have an easy spot to find you. And
Nice.
out of all the content and everything you've watched and you're watching right now, what is your favorite YouTube or podcast that you enjoy watching now?
Well, my favorite was Dion Live. Dion
Okay.
McNeil has a live, but I have to work now. I have a new job that works the second shift, so I can't watch it anymore. So I'm kind of bummed. But I also watch Zuber's financial news every morning. So that's another thing that just kind of keeps me updated on what's going on in the world. And yeah, so those are a couple of the channels that I really like a lot.
Awesome. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on. Congrats to you and your wife because this is a huge step.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. And we'll touch base here soon.
For sure. I appreciate you having me on.
Yep, thanks.